get the talents into Freiburg, into the club very early on, but also don't miss their normal development as a human. So there's a big focus in the youth academy to finish school, to learn a job, to try to go to university.
My sincere apologies to you all for being a few hours late today. It's finals week here, and there's a lot to grade and a lot going on. And this episode technically turned out to be rather difficult. But if the quote you just heard sounds a little bit holistic, a little bit assistant professor of football-ish, then yes, you wouldn't be far off with at least some of what they are attempting at SC Freiburg, a former yo-yo club from a pretty progressive greenish town on the very southwestern edge of Germany that's now firmly established in the Bundesliga. The club is 120 years old this year. Just a few days ago, it published its first investigation into its own history during Nazi rule in Germany. It's one of the German clubs that paid attention early on to football for women, and that shows. It's a pioneer in the establishment of youth academies in Germany and also notable for the long tenure of some of its recent coaches. So it's the kind of club that likes its coaches biking to the training ground and that historically doesn't see relegation as a huge drama. All in all, I like them, and I think they're flying under the radar undeservedly, and too often in English-speaking football media. You are different, of course, so you get different. Patrick Bucher is with us. He's from the working group on the Sportclub's history. Uwe Schellinger, the mastermind behind the new club archive and book and the renewed focus on history within the club, said his English wasn't good enough, so Patrick should do it. And I owe them both thanks for this episode coming together. Before we travel to Freiburg, right on the border with France and Switzerland, though, I have a book to give away. So last episode, the one with Mr. Multi-Club owner, about which I got a lot of feedback. Thank you very much for that, and I'm glad it sparked thoughts and interest. I told you that I had an extra copy of David Kilpatrick's 95 Theses on the Reformation of Football. And among all the likes, reposts, or comments, I wrote the names of all these accounts down and drew them on paper from a bowl with my hands. And there was no notary present. And the Pro-Rel Spectator was drawn. So that's the account's name now that I drew, the Pro-Rel Spectator. They're following the assistant professor of football on Blue Sky and X. And I don't know the actual name behind. It's an account that's focused especially on club identity and on the soccer pyramid, and that is not there in the US. So it'll be good to know who is behind that. So Pro-Rel Spectator, send me your address and the book will go out to you. Shipping costs are on me. How generous, especially since it's a US address. I'm pretty sure I don't have to send it to the one listener in the Vatican. If you ever listen in again, it happens every few weeks. Please let me know who you are. I'm terribly curious. So, Freiburg, Patrick and I recorded on the day of the book presentation. That was the reason why I really wanted to do something on Freiburg. And then he said he'd be better able to talk about the book after hearing the panel of the book presentation. Plus, we didn't want to leak what the book was about a few hours before the presentation. So he came back from that presentation with notes. And that is why his answers in that section of the interview on the book you will hear are pretty much lecture quality. Please share, please like, please spread the word to those you know who like soccer cultural coverage off the beaten path and off the path of clickbait. I hope you enjoyed a trip to Freiburg. Greetings to the far southwest of Germany. And don't call it Württemberg, it's Baden. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, and it's nice to be in your podcast.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to the club, what you do for the club right now, your soccer fan biography?
Well, it's actually very classical, so to speak. So my parents took me to a game when I was 4.
Yes.
In the old Stadion.
Mm-hmm.
I think next year will be my 30th anniversary to attending Sportclub Freiburg games. And yeah, we lost 0-3 against Karlsruhe. It wasn't the best game, but I got hooked to it already with 4 years old. I still have my season tickets. I try to attend as many games as I can in the season.
Standing or seating?
Standing still.
Okay.
I'm 33, but not old enough to get my season tickets. I would miss something, definitely. And I try to attend as many games as possible. So I'm going to away games in our European seasons a few years ago. I traveled to Athens, for example, to London, to France, and to Juventus Turin, and to try to get everything I can.
You are part of the Sportcast Freiburg, podcast about the club, and also very involved in the club's recent efforts at working on its own history, right?
Yeah, we're doing episodes about every game of the male team, first team. I'm also a huge part in the female team and the women's team. We make episodes for them as well because they play in the Bundesliga as well and play a big part in the German club system as well.
They are, with 2 former Sturm Graz players in the team, I would note. More importantly for this podcast, you're quite involved in the beginning historiographical activity in the club and about the club, right?
I'm part of the so-called Arbeitskreis Vereinsgeschichte.
So Arbeitskreis is a very German title. How do we translate it?
It is. How would I translate it? It's like a working group about the club's history. We're, I think right now, 12 guys and 1 woman. And we're just trying to keep the club's history and also try to establish a club or a focus on the club's history, because a lot of years it was really missing in the club that history is an important part of a club's identity. And so, we are there having little projects. For example, we had our first big project where we looked into the first squad in the year of 1914 who traveled to Italy for an away game. Mm-hmm. And so we looked into the team of that time, into the guys playing there, what they did. So to get a understanding about what are the roots of the club and also what were the views and the time of the persons inside it.
Mm-hmm. How did that come about? And are you all younger folks? It strikes me that across, especially German football, interest in club history is revived often by our generation, and forgive me for calling myself young here, but are not old enough yet to have lived a lot of this, but old enough to know that history really matters and that roots really matter, right? How did this get started in Freiburg?
Well, one part, or a huge part, and one of the most important part, is definitely the, let's call it, chief executive officer of the archives, Uwe Schellinger, who is the main guy in the club managing the club's archives.
Yes, proper historian.
He is a historian, as well. And he almost only works there as a mini job. So it's not a main business he does. Yeah. But he really established a focus on the history part inside the club, since he's part of the club. And I came in contact with him, I think, in 2021, where we had general annual meeting of the club members. And I asked the executive board about the museum in Freiburg, because when we built the new stadium, we will probably talk about the stadiums later on. It was a huge interest of the club members to establish some kind of museum inside the new stadium. And that didn't really happen at the time. So I asked the executive board what were the reasons behind it and if there's something planned. Yeah. To summarize it, they didn't have room for it and didn't plan any rooms for it, although it was a member's interest. But now we have a little museum corner inside the fan shop, which isn't great, but it's something. It's more than we had all the years before. And with this regard and this talking going on the in the meeting, I came in contact with Uwe, and with a few guys already interested in the club's history, we established this working group together nearly 2 years ago.
Is it accountable to the club? Like, are you lodged in the structures of the member-owned club?
Yeah, it's hard to say. On one part, yes, because everyone attending in this working group, we are all members. So, of course, we are inside the club. It's a club structure because the whole club is member based. So, yeah, we are, but we are completely working encapsulated and for ourselves.
Yeah,
and on with our own time, sometimes own money if we need to.
Yeah,
and we only get in contact officially with the club if we want to work together on some things. For example, I just talked about the Italian topic. So we try, for example, to get something out of it, to make a publication, something like that, together with the club to establish something.
Yeah.
But we are not really inside the club, so to speak.
Okay. And that it varies. I've seen it very widely. 1860 has an official section for club history, the Abteilung Vereinsgeschichte. Sturm in Austria has a consulting group that is lodged in the structures. Others have very active grassroots things that aren't necessarily lodged in the structure, which can be an advantage. And it seems like that's where you're at right now. Where would you like to be in, say, 5 or 10 years?
So yeah, to get all the club's committees together to recognize us as a working group and to recognize the club's history and all their doings. And I think this will be the next huge stepping stone. Uwe did some great things and it really improved over the last couple of years, but there's still so much room more to go. And of course, a museum would be the go-to thing I would really like to see in the future. And maybe there is a chance with the old Dreisam which is still still attended by, for example, the women's team.
Yeah.
That could be like a location where a museum could maybe be established.
Yeah. Hey, we'll get to that precious old stadium still in use. And there is a lot of history to write about. It's 1904 when we have the first evidence of what will become the Sportclub Freiburg. And it's not that name and it's not red and white yet. What is it in 1904? What kind of city is Freiburg? And what's the vision of the founders here? What's going on there?
Well, I think firstly to speak, Freiburg is a small town in the southwestern of Germany where no big cities are around. So we are in the so-called Dreiländereck, which is the free country corner. So right besides France and Switzerland. And so the big cities in the region are Basel in Switzerland, Strasbourg on the side of France, and Karlsruhe in the north of Baden, of the region we're in. And
so Freiburg, Karlsruhe is considerably bigger than Freiburg?
I actually don't know. I think it is. So Freiburg has, it
may well be, and it has a function in German national governments that Freiburg doesn't have, but Freiburg is about a little smaller than Graz.
Yeah. So we have, right now we have around 230,000 inhabitants, like I think. But yeah, it was in the Middle Ages. So Freiburg is a very old town. It was established over 900 years ago. And it has a very distinct feature in its location. So because it was in the Middle Age, trading city, because it was right in the center of the trading routes between the Alsace region in now France and the Black Forest on the east side, and the south side of Switzerland and north side of Baden, so Karlsruhe, Offenburg, and all those cities. So it was like a crossing section. And that's why Freiburg was established there, because it was in the center of those of the north-south and east-west trading routes. And in the beginning of the 20th century, Freiburg really developed the boom, like all over Germany. And a lot of, migration happened from inside Germany. So from, for example, Hamburg, many people came to Freiburg. And football was already established at the time in Freiburg. for example, by the Freiburger FC, which was the big club in Freiburg at that time.
Yes.
Which was established in the 19th century, as I remember correctly.
And yes, it still exists. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it still exists, but they're not the big club anymore in the town. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they were, for example, the German champion in 1907, I think. So
yes, that's what I have here as well. Yeah, just 3 years after.
Yeah. But yeah, so football was very hugely played in Freiburg, and there were two clubs founded at the time in 1904, the so-called Freiburger Fußballverein, 1904, with the colors white and black, and the so-called Freiburger FC Schwalbe. Schwalbe is like
swallow, the bird.
Yeah, and to dive in Germany as well. So if to dive in German means also to do a Schwalbe, which is kind of funny to have this wording in the back. But yeah, those two clubs, the colors of FC Schwalbe were black and yellow at that time, and those were two clubs in the Stühlinger. The Stühlinger is a part of the city established in the beginning of the 20th century on the eastern side of the Freiburg train station, central train station. And funnily enough, the city part of the city where I currently live in. And in this part, those two clubs played football against other clubs on very small basis. But the Stühlinger was a bit more on the poor side of society, working class in that time. So there's a old electricity plant built here in this part, and a lot of people work there. A lot of people worked at the post office. So it was like more on the working side and not on the like university-driven region, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to. Today, Freiburg is certainly known as a university town, a town where the Green Party is the largest share of the votes regularly. Back then, the FC is already around. Is the FC then the more upper middle class, bougie club?
I definitely grew up with it. So everyone said it when I was younger that they were they had the more rich club. And everyone going there were more the rich people. But I actually don't know if it was the case in the beginning of the 20th century. It could definitely be, but I really don't know. But yeah, those two clubs got established. And in the year of 1912, those two clubs fused together. And that is the real founding date of this Sportclub Freiburg, the 3rd of March, 1912.
Schwalbe renames itself 2 times in these short years up to 1912. So this is a period where many clubs aren't quite sure about their names, but where they fit in this whole spectrum of this new sport.
Also, what's very interesting is that football hadn't that huge appeal at that time. Yeah. So gymnastics, for example, was a far more German sport, so to speak. The football wasn't like the English, British immigrated sports, and not the sport everyone wanted to play or even attend. And I think that's interesting to recognize, because today football is the biggest sport in Germany and probably all over Europe as well.
Mm-hmm. You are right. Football is the new thing. It's the imported thing. It's the thing that has a reputation that's sometimes doubtful. Too rowdy, too much going on. Whereas gymnastics is a lot more structured. And for those of you who are watching Bundesliga or second or third league in Germany today from afar, whenever you see a T, the letter T in the name of a club, very often that stands for Turnen, which points to the fact that the club has roots in the gymnastics movement there earlier, late 19th century, not early 20th century, right? So 1860 Munich, the TSV, and they're the classic example.
Yeah, and also a very important club in Freiburg is the Freiburger Turnerschaft, FT Freiburg, from 1848. So very old club in Freiburg. They, for example, have a big volleyball team at the moment playing in the first league in Germany. And also Sportclub Freiburg went into FT Freiburg in the times of National Socialism.
Okay,
so they got integrated by the Nazis because the club's identities were demolished at the time, and they got structured into that club, which is quite fun now. It just came to my mind as we talked about it.
Yeah. The Sportclub, though, when it's formed in 1912 and it has the griffin head, which is still in the coat of arms of the club today, when it has that, it's not a multi-club though. No. Sorry, not a multi-sports club, right? It's just football,
just
straight up football.
Soccer, football. Yep.
Yeah.
Was from the beginning and still is. We have a tennis corner, but all in all, it's a football club. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about the colors?
That's
black and white for the emblem today, but always been red and white for the jerseys. What are they like back then?
So they were still black, white, and yellow at the time. At the time of the fusion, the official colors were black, white, and yellow. And I don't know the exact year, but there's a rumor going on that the youth academy players at the time wanted to rebel against the old ones and came to the pitch in red pants with white kids, and somehow they liked it and they get the majority, and then the club's color changed. So that's the rumor going on how that were established. And since then, I don't know the exact year, to be honest, when that happened. But it has to be around the 1920s to 25, probably around that time. If I say something wrong, I'm very sorry. Uwe, sorry. But yeah.
Yes. Once the SC emerges after World War II, for sure, it's red and white. And we should add probably red and white are also the city's colors. That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense. It's the emblem of the Freiburg city is a red cross in a white shield. And that's how the colors came together.
Sind eine Schar in Freiburgs Mauern, die lebt die frische Jugend soll, haben gesunde Glieder nicht zum Trauern, nur in der Freiheit ist uns wohl. Drum lasst zu unserer Lust und Sportclub Seelen uns auf den grünen Rasen gehen, zu treiben edles Fußballspiel, das sei des Sportclub Jüngers Ziel.
When we are in Germany in 1912, we're not too far off from a period that the club has been actively working to research on, and that a book is now out as well. But before World War II comes around, before National Socialism takes over, is there a rise in the fortunes of the new SC? So are the two clubs evenly matched pretty soon here? Or does that not happen until quite a bit later?
They actually were. So around, well, it's hard to say because after the First World War began in 1914, the football in Germany changed, of course. So there were more like let's call it military leagues going on at that time. So it's hard to compare the clubs at the time of war. But at the time, in 1916, for example, they were the second best team and just behind Offenburg in the league going on at the time, and even in front of the Freiburger FC in that table in the time going on. but still, for a lot of years going on until the 80s, Freiburger FC was the big club in Freiburg.
How do politics play into soccer in Freiburg starting in the 20s and 30s?
That's hard to say. And now it's very interesting. You mentioned the book which just came out. A lot of the early years, especially, let's say, since 1925, around that, it's hard to really have evidence at the time because Freiburg was bombed in the Second World War, especially on November 29th of 1944, where nearly the whole old town in Freiburg was completely flattened by the Allies. Although Freiburg wasn't a huge military town, but it has this focal point and this, like I said, this centralized trading route point. And that's why it was a focus for bombings in the Second World War. And the club's, let's say club's main bar where they attended and had everything was completely burned at the bombing nights. So really, we don't have that much evidence of the time about early member structures, about huge loads of the club's identity at the time, because it was just demolished and burned at the time. Yeah. So that's why this new book is certainly very interesting. What they could see and could bring into the bright eyes.
Yeah, into the public's eye, right? The new book comes out right in time for the 120th anniversary of SC Freiburg and is entitled Spielball der Ideologien, ? So the plaything of ideologies. You already mentioned records burning. How is the situation of what historians call primary sources? What sources do you have from the period?
The situation was and is mediocre. Other clubs, for example, have complete membership records. Sportclub did not, but they had the club's magazines from those periods, and they also looked into denazification protocols, persecution protocols of members who were persecuted, but also found functionaries who were part of the NSDAP and used their privileges to buy up Jewish properties cheaply.
The Nazi party's officials. Yeah. The question for clubs during this time is often what happened to our stadium? Like, did it get bombed? Did it become an army marching ground? What did the research in Freiburg reveal?
The Winter Stadium was used for pre-war military exercises from 1938 onwards and was took from them. So at that time, they were forced to merge with the FT in 1938, were only a football section of that club, but continued to use their name. And luckily, the archives of the FT are very good and are completely preserved for the whole period of 1938 until 1952, where then Sportclub became his own club again. So they could do the study and managed to look into 3 periods, basically. The pre-war period in the 20s up until 1933, the time under the Nazi regime, and the time after the war. Before the war, parts of the club have clear overlaps with classic Nazi thinking and ideology. For example, a keyword was sports used for military purposes pre-war, as the Treaty of Versailles only permit the Weimar Republic to have 100,000 soldiers at max. The idea was to use sport as a thing to build up military strength again. And a lot of people at the time felt badly handled by the Treaty of Versailles. Some thought, for example, that the Alsace region belongs to Germany and not France. So in addition to this revanchism thinking against France, there definitely are lots of nationalistic ideas in the club.
Yeah. Not terribly surprising work, but very important work that you all did there. Peculiar thing about Freiburg, perhaps, is it's a border town, and the club already has international connections. From a superficial view, we tend to think of Nazi Germany as kind of a bubble. Nobody gets in, nobody gets out. But this is Freiburg, Switzerland is close, France is close. How did that undercurrent shape the club's identity and activities during the time?
There was also great international exchange and many away games in France and Switzerland because of the region we are living in. One citation in the club's magazines reads, for example, "We on the border have the task of ensuring international understanding." So the club had a mix of different ideas and thinking at that time. The sources on the exclusion of Jewish members and changes to the statutes of the clubs are very poor. Virtually nothing can be proven, nor the opposite, because it's just there isn't anything to get any ideas about it. But it's clear that exclusion mechanisms from 1933 onwards definitely took effect. For example, on the 27th of May 1933, the General Assembly actively appointed NSDAP members to the board, and the NSDAP city councillor was appointed first chairman. So there was a great obedience and loyalty at the beginning, also towards Hitler, which was publicly proclaimed. But also there was a change over the years. After the first years, it became less public. People began to keep quiet and their heads down. For example, there aren't any public slogans about the final victory claim of the Wehrmacht. Over time, it seems pragmatism prevailed. Also, political contrast prevailed. Several club members were proven to be critical of the regime and also had communist thinking. They seem to have had an amazing ability to stick together in the club despite political differences. Association and the club was bigger than political views, it seems. So there's a clear difference between the first years and the later years after Hitler's takeover.
And how would you say this fits into the broader picture? Football clubs during the time in the region, but also maybe in Germany more broadly. There's a number of clubs that have already undertaken some of the work that is going on in Freiburg right now, the research, the activism, the talking about it. And there have been some veritable battles between historians about how involved versus how resistant clubs were during the period.
There are a lot of similarities. There's a very similar picture nearly everywhere. They were willingly allowed themselves to be brought into light by the regime, did not show solidarity with Jewish members, with the exceptions of individual members. So the SC was overall in the middle. Not a pronounced Nazi club per se, but not an opposition club either, what they afterwards like sometimes said. So, for example, after the war, the reason was given that they were a workers' club and therefore always opposed the regime. But the members list of 1947, for example, shows a rather bourgeois club, actually. So, with the workers' class idea wasn't there at the time. And also there was a Hitler visit in 1932 where he visited Freiburg. And there was a rumor that the Sportclub actively boycotted this event, but this is simply not true. There's no sources providing that they did. There was one club member who probably threw stones, but that's it. So the club definitely wasn't against it at all. What's really interesting also is the time after the war, because there's collective silence. In the club's magazines, there was only mentioned that the stadium had been lost, but topics like the enforced conformity, Nazification, etc. were simply kept quiet. Questions in the 60s, for example, were consistently blocked. People played just dump. Hans Baumgart, for example, upper Nazi, made an honorary member after the war. He was a forward at the club in the 1920s and joined the NSDAP in the early 20s as well, and later joined the SS. He later worked at Karlshagen concentration camp, became a camp guard, became a part of the leader of the camp, and he definitely gave the order for at least 2 members of the La Résistance to get killed inside the camp. He was imprisoned after the war and was released in 1955 after 10 years, and appointed honorary member in June 55. He was received like a prodigal son, even though people knew what he had done.
This, how should we call it? This will to forget is fairly widespread in what I have seen, Austria and southern Germany in particular. Thank you for sharing what's going on there, and respect to Freiburg on your 120th history. undertaking this book project? When then does the club move into what's now known as the Dreisamstadion? And
They
is
moved-
the home ground here of
It took some years. So they moved into the Dreisamstadion in the year of 1964.
Mm-hmm.
And 63, so around that time, and they did some hopping until then, so to speak. They had a stadium already at the place where the Dreisamstadion was built.
Okay.
But they didn't play there yet because they played on the on the field besides it, the so-called Hindenburg-Stadion, which was near of that location. But then at the time, Achim Stocker, who is one of the most, or even the most important figure in the club's history, especially in the newer times, they built the stadium, and which was one of the reasons this club took off, so to speak.
The stadium as well as Achim Stocker.
Yeah, both, of course.
So let's talk about him. Who is he? Is this modern day Uber figure? And there's no way around him when you read your way into SC Freiburg, especially the rise of the club after World War II. Who is he? How does he get?
So Achim Stocker was born in 1935 in the Bodensee area, which is just. If you hop from Freiburg over the Black Forest, you land at the Bodensee, which is a big lake.
You're almost in Austria.
Yeah, you are. There's also a free country corner at the Bodensee, but not with France, but with Austria in that regard. He played in Freiburg. He was an active player. He studied law in Freiburg, and he lived his whole life there. And in the year 1972, he was voted the new club's executive officer. And he was the main guy of the club until, his death in the year of 2009, which is a lot of years. This is 47 years, sorry. And that's just ridiculous. And he really established the club's identity, the modern club's identity. So with him at the top, SC Freiburg was promoted to the second Bundesliga for the first time, and even got into the so-called eingleisige second Bundesliga. At the beginning of the second Bundesliga, there were different leagues on that level. So because a southern region, a northern region, and they got fused together in 1981, and Freiburg was part of it. But still, the club had problems. We didn't have at the moment, we have very calm situation when it comes to coaches. But at that time, the coaches got fired a lot. So we had every half a year, a new coach, sometimes only a few weeks. Achim Stocker was a very, let's call fiery guy. Everyone loved him at the club, but I think if you have to be together with him on a business side, he was a tough guy. And you really didn't want to mess with him.
Yeah, because these enigmatic presidents, these go-getters who dominate a lot of clubs, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In some clubs, they are almost a bit loathed right now. So they're these uber figure, almost dictator-like figure, in whose shadow the club as a member-owned organization kind of existed. In other clubs, they're really revered. Stocker seems to be in the latter category. He now seems to be really revered in SC Freiburg. Am I seeing this right?
Yeah, because what he did was good. So overall, and he was a very future-oriented guy, so to speak, because the club wasn't only his club or his working station, something like that. it was his identity. And he really lived and breathed this club's identity. And he attended the games. And in his early years, he were at the sausage stand when someone was missing to give sausages to the people. So he really lived this club from the morning, I think, until he went to bed in the evening. And he did something in the year of 1991, which was the probably most genius thing someone did at the time. He attended Volker Finke, the new club's coach. With Volker Finke, I think we will talk about him later on. The reach to the top began with him at the sideline. The club was promoted to the Bundesliga for the first time in 1993, and he was together with Finke until Finke went away, which was in the year of 2007. Mm-hmm. So 16 years Volker Finke was his coach on the sidelines, and both of them really led the club to a bright future.
Zuhause, wo das Stadion an der Dreisam parkt. Für das Münster, für die Stadt, durch die das Bächle fließt. Für die Dankbarkeit, Achim Stocker, rest in peace. 93 Aufstieg, 95 Slavia Prag. Ausgesperrte Brüder, schöne Grüße an den Vaterstab. Hier gab es Legenden wie Cardoso oder Richie Golds. Und bin ich ehrlich, ich bin mehr als nur ein bisschen stolz. 120 Jahre zwischen Reden und dem schwarzen Wald. Hier kann es passieren, dass ein Golfball auf dein Schädel...
An absolute era. I mean, those were the twins of the German media titled The Football Miracle in Freiburg, and those are the two heads you would see here. However, I can ask there. You said he's fiery. He's also literally firing coaches quite a bit. Stocker. And then comes Finke. And today the image is that the secret of success in Freiburg is this continuity. Finke got a lot of time. Christian Streich got a lot of time. That's Freiburg. It sounds like from what you're describing, that's not always what Freiburg is. And maybe the success came before Stocker was finally at ease enough to be able to say, okay, we can afford continuity here because things are going well. How should I read that? Is it a conscious decision for, we'll carve out a special Freiburg way of continuity? Or, well, things are working, so Finke just gets to stay. And that's how today's mentality gets to be.
Maybe that's just speculation on my part now. But
of course.
Maybe Volker Finke is also a very fiery guy in his presence at the sideline, but also inside the club. So I think both hotheads together, they knew how to handle each other very well. They really, they had heated discussions in all of these years. It would be a miracle if they didn't. But I think they knew how to handle each other in a way to always have the club in focus and that the main priority, to get everything personal behind that. And I think that was the main part to succeed at the time, because they always knew whatever the other one said had reasoning behind it. And if someone was defending this reasoning with all of their heart, they probably switched about that and felt, okay, maybe he's not wrong, and maybe let's talk about it, let's discuss it. And I think that's something which definitely could lead to this successful story. And from the outside, it probably felt like a calm working place, but I don't think it was on the inside.
Right. No, it doesn't sound like that with those two characters. How do you know how much of an active members club Freiburg is at the time? Is there, obviously annual meetings, but any hot issues within the membership base there?
Nah, I wasn't a club member at that time, so I was still too young, and I really don't know much about that. But as far as I heard all over the years, the general meetings, and there still are, sometimes very calm, because you have the guys in the front, and they do exceptionally job. So why should I say something against it as a member? Because I voted for them. They did a great job. So why should we change something? Yeah. And that's I think it was very often like this until the heated discussions began around 2005, 2006, where Finke got questioned at his position. And there are really two forms established also in the members and in the fan sides, one pro Volker Finke and one definitely contra him. And that's where.
Sorry, that's also an era where Freiburg is in the second Bundesliga for a little bit.
Yeah. So that's something we didn't say. In that time, in all of the 16 years, Freiburg got promoted to the first league. They played in the UEFA Cup, which is now the UEFA Euroleague, and but they also got relegated. I think 3 times with Finke. But he did. It wasn't a question to think about a new coach at the time, because that's our way. We are a small club, especially financially. We were a small club at the time, so second Bundesliga was always an option, and the main goal for each season was let's try to stay in the first Bundesliga, and if we get relegated and try to get back.
Yeah,
and so that was always a very clear focus, and everyone knew where they came from, because only a few years ago they were the second club in the town, in the city, and now we're the first club. But still, that's not really founded yet. So we don't have the finances, we don't have the big sponsors here at the region. We have to think about other things to focus on to be special and to get yourself established in German football, and then those two together did something great and built up the first youth academy, very centralized youth academy in German football, the so-called Freiburger Fußballschule, which translates to the Freiburg School of Football, and which was established in the old stadium of the bigger Freiburger FC.
I know, yeah, you bought the Mösli Stadion is what it's called.
Exactly, yeah.
Near a mosque there, or at least used to be. For the football schule. Is that maybe the lasting legacy of the Stocker-Finke period?
Yes.
Because, I mean, success, you make a good summer of transfers, you become known as Freiburg's Brazilians for the attractive style of play, that kind of thing. But that's not sustainable buildup. But you're saying the sustainable buildup does happen, maybe one level lower with the academy. Also a non-football man. I mean, Volker Finke, I think, was the driving force behind putting solar cells on the roof of the old stadium, right?
Also,
he's a coach, right?
Yeah.
And that's what he's...
Yeah,
that's what he cares about.
A few minutes ago, I said that Stocker was always someone who tried to look into the future and to be conservative on one side, especially financially, but also thinking about possibility to make itself unique. And the establishment of the Freiburger Youth Academy was a huge success and was a huge risk at the time, because it cost a lot of money, millions of D-Mark, which was the currency back then. Or it was at the beginning, they changed to Euro then in time of building. But still, it was a huge load and financial risk to take at the time to build something up like that. But it was a huge success. It still is a huge success. The Freiburg Youth Academy still holds a big reputation all over German football, but also a bit abroad. And at that time, it was one of the first big youth, or probably the big youth academy in Germany. Now every club nearly has this youth academy. Some clubs have better youth academies, or let's call it bigger, like, for example, Red Bull Leipzig or Rasenball Sport Leipzig, how they call it officially. They put huge amounts of money into their youth academies, try to grab the players all over Europe. Freiburg always had the approach to establish a youth academy for the players in the region, in the border region of France to Switzerland, to get the talents into Freiburg, into the club very early on, but also don't miss the normal development as a human. So there's a big focus in the youth academy to finish school, to learn a job, to try to go to university if you're not a pro yet, because it's a huge risk, or it's not a big chance to be one of the, let's call it 400 people playing in the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
To be part of that exquisite collection of players, you have to be good. So there's a huge lot of players who can't take that step. And it was always a huge focus for Finke, who was a teacher, and also for Achim Stocker, to never lose the focus on the normal development of youth players and the youth in general. So if someone doesn't get to be a pro football player, they still have something in their hands and can try to make a normal living and live a normal life after their youth academy. And that's some, let's say, focus points which are very, very well written into the identity of the club.
Would you say that holistic view of what football is and what a football club is, from the formation of young people to solar cells on the roof to conservative financing, innovative planning, would you say that that consensus still defines SC Freiburg today?
It does, in a general sense, yes. But also you have to, see that football in Freiburg grew bigger over the last years, especially in the last 5 to 6 years since our last promotion. Since our last promotion to the Bundesliga, Freiburg took off. We reached the male club final for the very first time in 21, which was the biggest success and the biggest game we ever had. We sadly lost, which is still haunts everyone's dreams. But still, when I joined as a member, I think it was around 12 years ago, we had under 10,000 club members. Now at the moment we have over 70,000 club members. So this club skyrocketed. Yeah. We reached the EuroLeague 2 times in a row in the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. We are one of the financially stable clubs in all over Germany. Yeah. We have, I think, the first or second most own money, Eigenkapital, it's called in German. So the own money you got yourself inside the business.
Yes. Your foundational capital. Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of the most biggest all over Germany. And we are still member based, so we don't have of course we have sponsors, but we don't have an investor, we don't have an owner, an external owner in that club. Mm-hmm. And so this skyrocketed, and we although we still have those look into the future, sustainability reasons, youth academy reason, all of the aspects, we are a professional football club who has heaps loads of money and who pays their people and players a heap load of money. So the players playing at our side, they earn millions now, probably.
Of course,
I don't know the exact numbers, but you're part of this business, and sometimes you see it that you're part of the business. So to say you're the little club in the southwestern of Germany doing everything like no one else does, that's not the case anymore, because you couldn't sustain this reasoning or this view on the club in such a professionally and completely commercialized sector.
Yes, thank you. You took the question away, because I was going to ask about whether or not there's something a little bit too cute to continuing the narrative of the little club in the Southwest, because of course you're part of bigger business as well and want it to be. Any parts of being a bigger business that to you these days are particularly grating, by the way?
Yeah, well, especially you asked how the members got an influence in the club.
70,000. I mean,
yeah, that's a huge amount of people. But at our last general meeting, which was 1.5 months ago, 900 attended. So okay. You have a big difference between the people identifying with the club or trying to get tickets, because our home tickets especially are sold out every game. And to get even the chance to get a ticket, you have to be a member. Mm-hmm. So that's the main reason for many people to be a club member. But not every member wants to be part of the club's internal structure. So that's one problem I see. And also the club, like I said, it skyrocketed, but the structures behind it didn't. So sometimes the executive boards and the committees they are still working, or sometimes working like we're still a small little club who can just say, yeah, we do it that way, but we aren't anymore. And it develops, but it develops far more slow than the club's member and also the finances grew over the last years. And that's a bit concerning to don't lose the focus in that business, and also try to get the members who want to be part of the club to be still part of the club and to get into your decisions, because we have different topics in the club where I, as a member, feel like I can't do anything against it, because I'm so small now, and also I don't have the let's say channels to communicate with the club's the decision makers to be a part of the clubs anymore. And that's concerning. And also they try to fix it, and there's a huge concerning factor the member said on the last general meeting, but still it's a hard topic to don't lose that, really focus on the members.
Yes. And that's why in all of these discussions about how wonderful Germany's 50+1 rule is, and it is, and I'm supportive in many ways, but it's not the one golden ticket to participatory structures. It's not the one golden tickets to belonging and meaning, right? If you have 70,000 members, but only 1,000 of them show at a meeting, there's still some difficulties that have to be figured out, even within this pretty good 50+1 and member owned structure.
Yeah. And also we have this like on not football topics as well. So especially like political views. Mm-hmm. We are in the club is a political neutral club. So they don't, or they try don't to say something in that regard officially. But still the world is changing. There are different views rising. In Germany, we have a far right sector growing over the last years, like everywhere probably, but in Germany we have that, and a lot of people want the club to take a position in that regard, to really stand for their beliefs, because although we are politically neutral, it's also said in the club's official documents that we try to go against everything related, racism, sexism, all of these regards.
Yeah, there's anti-discrimination statutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And that's hard to get together, those 2 points, because those ideologist questions, or
ideological maybe, or
thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Exactly. All of these questions are deeply connected to the party system, for example, in Germany as well. So if you are anti-discrimination and are in favor of let's freedom of speech and all of these regards to let everyone live their lives, you go actively against some views in the political spectrum. And that's how also some conflicts start to embark, because there are members who think that way, because the club grew, and football is always, I think, like a image of a society. And so as these positions grow in a society, these positions grow inside a club as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's, for example, one thing where a lot of members want to let the club take position on that regards. Yeah. That's it's a hard factor, because officially they can't take a stand because they're neutral. But yeah, that's a huge discussion going on as well.
Well, we can't have that discussion, I think, without talking about Christian Streich a little bit as well. And the precedent that he set as a coach. So Finke resigns in 2007. Robin Dutt comes in, leaves in 2011. In that period, Freiburg goes down, the second goes back up again. And then comes Christian Streich. Who is he, and why did I just throw him in when we were talking about politics?
Yeah, but you forgot one coach, Markus Sorg, who was there for half a year.
Oh, okay.
Markus Sorg, now the co-coach at Hansi Flick's Barcelona, which is quite funny.
Okay.
He was sacked after half a year because it was a disastrous first half of the season.
Ooh,
and then Christian Streich, who was his co-coach at the time, took over. And Christian Streich has a big identity or history with the club. He played there as an active player.
Mm-hmm.
And was a youth coach since the mid-90s, and was also one of the driving factors behind the scenes at the establishments of the Freiburg Youth Academy we talked about earlier. And he took over, and at first he was a volcano on the sidelines. That's the first impression you get when he took over.
By the way, didn't he start his playing career and maybe ended too at the FC?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Yeah. That's funny you mentioned it, but yeah, he did. He was in the rivals club, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. At least the old rival, but by then.
Yeah.
So you said, okay, he seems like a volcano.
Yeah. So he was on fire at every game. Everyone loved it because that was something special you missed, especially with Markus Sorg this half a year before. But then you realized after a bit of time in his press conferences that he started to talk about other topics than football. And this took over and got bigger for each year, probably. So normal press conferences in Germany take around 15 to 20 minutes. They talk about football and then the coaches go away. Mm-hmm. With Christian Streich at the later stages, his press conferences, they took around 45 minutes, for example, until an hour, because he was a guy the media could ask about topics not related to football directly, to talk about questions about society, about presidency elections in the USA, for example, about crisis all over the world, about topics like racism, modernization of football, the World Cup in Qatar, which was a huge human topic, human rights-driven topic.
Yeah.
And he took the time and said things about it. Very good things, in my opinion. So
yeah, I mean, he gave these both emotional but also very informative mini lectures.
Yeah. You see, he's also
conferences.
He studied to be a teacher, so you see that. So he's an intellectual person. He reads a lot. He's very interested in the world. He's interested in people. So if you get to meet him, for example, after games in the city late at night, you can talk to him, and he's completely open-minded. He's interested in you as a person, and that's something which always was and still is something very special, because football nowadays is its own bubble. It's completely professionalized bubble where everyone thinks about what they say 2 or 3 times before they say it. Christian Streich always was a bit different, because for him it was important to use his position as a coach of one big club in Germany, where media is attending his speeches, to say something about the state of the world, so to speak. And he used the time to encourage people to fight against discrimination, for example, to go on the streets, to protest, to think about what you're doing, to think about sustainability in your everyday life, to question things about modern football. Yeah. And that was something unimaginable and still is very rare in football, and that's why he was this big person.
Yeah. And the big German discussion, first big moment, seemingly big breakthrough, then big discussion on refugees, asylum seekers in 2015 falls during his tenure. And I've always noted he has had a lot of meaningful things to say about that as well. And football's social responsibility, I don't think it's an accident or even exaggerated when the New York Times once called him German soccer's social conscience. Over time, he developed this kind of aura. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did. For example, you just mentioned the refugee topic, which was big in 2014, 2015, 14, and still is a big topic in Germany, because we still have feel the consequences of the time, positively as negatively. And he said, for example, at the time, we need to help those people coming here for refuge, because if you look at human history, nearly everyone was a refuge once in their past. So everyone moved all over the world, and we are just happy and we are so privileged to live in the country and at the time we live now. We could live, or we could have been born somewhere else and couldn't have been this lucky. And to always think about where you are in a society and that everyone deserves help was a big topic. But he also, like I said, with the far right growing, he was, of course, also a big target for those groups as well, as in different thinking media, so to speak. And yeah.
It's, of course, not an accident either that he gets into this role. He does have meaningful things to say, and he did study not just sport, but also history. And he, just like Finke, is also a teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
Certified teacher. The new coach isn't.
No. Julian Schuster is just a football guy.
Are you in for trouble?
Two things I have to add. So the first thing at the press conferences, now they're normal. They talk about football. Okay, and it's over after 15 to 20 minutes. So, yeah, you don't have the big press conference anymore. But also Julian Schuster was a player under Christian Streich.
Yes.
He came from Stuttgart and played in the club for, I think, 10 years, something like that. He was our captain on the pitch. And he, after his active career, he went into the club as a coach, as a so-called Verbindungstrainer, which is like a connection coach between the youth academy players and the first team. And he had this role for a few years now, and now gets selected as the new head coach, as Christian Streich ended his coaching career, or at least his SC Freiburg coaching career at the end of last season. And it's a different coach, that's for sure. He's young. It's his first professional station as a coach. That's something different.
Yeah, for the club, but also a chance again to develop a new, well, perhaps a new era. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. So the first games were good. We have a good 6th place at the moment, but we also got kicked out of the German Cup yesterday against the third league team.
We are talking after the loss to Arminia Bielefeld. Greetings to Eva Lotta Bolev.
Yeah.
Listening. Yeah, Freiburg is out there.
Yeah, it was a disastrous game. And we have a quite tough weeks at the moment, so the football isn't that very good, but let's not focus on the sports part at the moment.
You're normally in the standing section of the stadium. What has changed there? For one, there's a stadium move, and it certainly plays a role in how Freiburg's fan culture has developed. But how would you say the curve behind the goal has grown in Freiburg from its roots in the old stadium and in the Finke era to what it is now?
I definitely changed. So when I compare it to the first time I went to the games, or the first years as a child, at that time there weren't that like focused fan structures in Freiburg. You had fan clubs, of course. You had groups of people going together to the game, but especially the atmosphere, it just came in unstructured and with the game. So I think you have some kind of that in English football still, although it's a bit more quiet, but still you have those like more bit situational.
Structurally, I think a lot of English football support would still work that way, but maybe we'll continue to.
Yeah, but so in the beginning of the 21st century, ultra culture got into Freiburg as well.
So you say beginning of the 21st, that's comparatively late.
Yeah, so maybe it took place at the end of the 90s as well, but not earlier.
Well, my hunch was always that Freiburg was one of the later ones where you visibly see ultra present in the stands, but that is purely an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, but I think that's could be correct. I would assume the same. But yeah, then ultra culture came into play, and there were a few years after the establishment, there were two big groups. The Wilde Jungs, Freiburg, which is the Wild Boys.
Yes.
And the Natural Born Ultras, NBU. And both of these groups don't exist anymore. The Natural Born Ultras took the stadium switch a few years ago as their end of their ultra culture, because they said the club grew a part of them. So they're not together anymore. And with the movement to the new stadium, it was the right time for them to end it. The
football in Freiburg to them had become too big, too modern, too shiny a little bit, and set the point to say this was our era.
Yeah, you can. That was the official reasoning behind it.
Yeah,
they published, but also they lost a lot of members in the last years of their existence, and also a lot lot former NBU members are still present in other ultra groups, and but also they joined other ultra groups as well. So we now have two other mainly ultra groups, which are Corillo and Synthesia.
Interesting names.
Yeah.
Corillo and Synthesia, like the synthesis in English, but with a different ending. Yeah.
I can't say why they chose this name. I'm not an ultra myself. I don't have that big look into it, but you can say that there are two different kinds of ultra groups. So Corillo are I think more on the leftist political side of views. They're also very engaged in fan politic topics all over Germany.
Yes.
A few of them, they really try to move forward the 50+1 rule, for example, to get it to know in Germany, to defend it all over Germany with other groups as well, so from other clubs.
The investor protests. Right.
Yeah, investor
earlier
protests, a big topic.
In Freiburg,
boycott Qatar movement was a big topic as well. And also, like, since last season, we have in the stadium a structure, a concept called Fuchsbau, which is the home of a fox, which is a concept for everyone who gets discriminated, and especially with sexual assaults inside the stadium, to have a concept how to go against it. So everyone in the knows the code word Fuchsbau, and if you feel attacked by someone, especially sexually, especially women on that regard, sadly, they can go to anyone in the stadium, say Fuchsbau, and they get help.
Yeah.
And this was something which wouldn't be here without the active membership and the ultra culture in Freiburg, because the club always took it as a very... They said it's a serious topic, but they didn't do something against it, or to establish something like that. And the active fan base really drove this topic forward until we have now something like that. And so especially Corillo are the group of those two who really try to get this on. Whereas Synthesia is more an old school ultra group, so to if I can say so. I think it's hard to say, but that's my view from the outside. They are very structured. So the banners they make are very structured. The lettering is very structured.
Very clean look. Yeah.
Yeah, very clean look. The the choreographies they do before games, for example, they are really well structured, very well done. But I think they have a very structured hierarchy inside the group as well. I would probably think so, because that's the look they give themselves from the outside. But yeah, these two groups are the driving forces in the ultra groups of Freiburg. And you said I want to shall compare it to the beginning. Now we have a really focused form of support at a game. So we have the guy, they do it together as one big group and a center behind the goal, and with megaphones with speakers to get the crowd going. But yeah, it's different than before, where it was like a more unstructured kind of support.
And that section in the new stadium behind the goal is the only one tier section in the stadium. So it goes all the way through top to bottom. Speaking of stadiums, do you miss the old haunting ground?
Yes and no at the same time. To get the no away of it first, the new stadium is far better reachable by car, by foot, by bicycle, and it's just more modern in the whole infrastructure inside the stadium as well. The food and drink stands are better. The paying system is better. The entry system is better. It was a huge mess to get into the stadium in the old stadium on the stands, because it was only like 4 little entry sectors at one side.
Very rickety. Yes.
Yeah. So that's something which definitely changed for the better.
So, your comfort level has increased significantly. The new stadium, we should say, the Europa Park Stadium, which doesn't mean that the stadium itself is the Europa Park. The Europa Park is an amusement park, so it sponsors the stadium. 2021 is when it was opened. The old Hans, the Dreisam Stadium, which is named after the river that flows through Freiburg, still there as well.
Exactly, and that's why I don't miss it that much, because I attend to go there, or I go there every now and then to watch, for example, the women's football, because the women team, they play at the Dreisam Stadion. The second male team also plays at the Dreisam Stadion, their league games. And so it's not away, and it's still part of the club's identity and club's professional structure. And it also will get renovated in the future. So the club will put money into this location to keep it alive, to change it a bit, but still to let it be part of the club.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. What's happening to the ground? It's unusual that it just stays standing there as it is. Are there plans to downsize a little bit or change the area around it a little?
Yeah, so definitely. So the Dreisam Stadion has room for 24,000 people. But especially at women games and games of the second male team, the stadium is far from sold out. So at women's game, we have around normally 2,000 to 3,000 people attending. With big games like against Bayern Munich, for example, we had 7,000 to 8,000, but it's still not that much compared to the overall attendance level. And at the second team of the male, we only get maybe 1,500 to 2,000 people attending there. So there are definitely plans to change it up, especially one side of the stadium, like the western side. This probably could move away in the future because nothing is there. It's just a ruin at the moment. And yeah, there are probably plans to make something out of it or to change it up. And also the club will put money into it to get new training facilities, for example, to renovate the changing rooms. Yeah, especially for the women and girls teams, they want to change it up. Probably one side of the stands will get demolished. Probably would be the reasonable thing to do because it's just a ruin at the moment. when no one goes. But also the training facilities and the changing rooms will get an upgrade in the future to really have a new location for all women and girls teams of the club, because they are spread around all over Freiburg at the moment still. And they want to focus it on one location to, give women's football in Freiburg a better future.
Yeah. And what's not so great about the new stadium?
Well, I think it's a stadium always grows with the moments you live in, or the moments you remember it with. So at first it was like a gray thing on a field with no personality. And if you go to the stadium, it sometimes feels like it still, because it's a very still rural region. It's just besides the airport in Freiburg.
There's
there are no
much
big trees.
It, yeah.
No, then the trees didn't grow yet. They need another 20 to 30 years probably to have a nice alley, for example, where you stroll through. But that's not there yet. So it's like every new stadium all over Germany. It couldn't fit into the city center, for example, because then the inhabitants would protest against it. You have to build it somewhere else, a bit more on the outside. And of course, in comparison to the Dreisamstadion, which is in the middle of a living region of a district, just besides the river, it's just a different atmosphere. But the new stadium, it grows with you and with the moments you see in that. So, for example, we had a crazy game against RC Lens in the European League last season, where we had the equalizer in a KO game at the second game in the 92nd minute to equalize and won it in extra time. And these memories you have, and they will get more and more in the future. This is the things you think about when you think about a stadium. You didn't have it at first, but now you have some moments after these 3 years now. And that's, I think, something which helps to let a stadium grow to you.
Yeah. And you have been away in the Europa League, I think, to West Ham's London Stadium. Yeah. And that stadium moves can be done far, far worse than what Freiburg has gotten there.
Yeah, the Olympic Stadium or London Stadium isn't the best stadium I attended. Just call it that way.
I know. Been there. Good. If we look ahead, let's say 5 years, with or without Julian Schuster, what would it take for you to say it's been a good 5 years for SC Freiburg as a club?
If we still stay in the Bundesliga with the first male squad and the first women's squad, it's simple as that. Although we are now one of the top 10 teams in Germany, it still haunts me till this day that we came from somewhere else, and that we weren't that we were a second tier team only a few years ago, and like in Germany, you call it Fahrstuhlmannschaft sometimes.
Elevator team.
An elevator team, yeah. And that's something which is deeply, deeply rooted in my thoughts about the club. And to never lose focus of that's something which is very important for myself. And also to just stay true to your beliefs and identity especially with the youth squad and the youth academy, that it will still have a huge role in the future. This will be then I'm happy. But I also would be happy if we get to the EuroLeague again, for example. If we maybe reach the Champions League one day, that would be a dream come true, of course, but that's not the main focus. And I would be happy to just have my league games in the first year, every second weekend here in Freiburg to attend to, and then I will be happy.
Yeah. And from somebody whose club this year surprisingly did make it into the Champions League, I'll take a Graz derby over it.
Maybe we will reach the club, the cup final once again in the next few years, and maybe we'll win it this time. Then I will definitely happy, and then nothing better can happen probably, because you won't be champion in Germany. Just Bayern, for example, although Leverkusen won it last year, Bayern is just financially too far away. Leipzig is too far away. Dortmund is too far away. Leverkusen is they're just too far away. They get heaps loads of money with the Champions League and all their global sponsors. I think it's not there had to be a big miracle to even think about a possibility to win the league. But to win a cup, that's with only one game in each round. That's still a possibility, and that would be definitely the little dream I had as a kid to always attend it. It came true a few years ago. Why shouldn't it become true with winning this thing?
Yeah. And a museum, I assume.
And a museum.
Coming back to that.
Yeah. Coming back to that topic, that would be also very nice to have something that maybe embedded into the Dreisamstadion at such an historical place.
Yeah.
That would be awesome as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, all the best from me. I don't really have any firm loyalties in the first German Bundesliga, but a lot of respect from the 90s onward, from when I started to follow football onward. Freiburg was always out there as doing something a little bit different than the others, and I think that's been maintained in some beautiful ways as well. And it's been a pleasure to hear that directly from you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and all the best for Sturm Graz, I think.
Thank you very much. We'll keep supplying your women's team with good players then.
Thank you.
Be well, and greetings to Baden.
Thank you, and bye to every listener out there.
Thank you. The second Sunday in Advent is just past us. As an Austrian, I know these things, which means that the holidays are close, and there will be a holiday special again here. It involves essentially an interview with me, but it also involves some AI translation things that I need to master yet. So I'm not going to tell you any details. That's coming. Then I will take one Monday off during my actual holiday break here at the college, and then be back with you again. Be well. Thank you for listening, and please do like, follow, or better, spread the word. It really helps.
Dann bleibt der Volk und in unserer Mitte. Dann bleibt Zwietracht vor der Tür. Für immer und besonders heute sei unser Sportclub uns erfreut. Dann ist die Zukunft